Hello, my name is Aiden Donegan and my student ID number is 2878585. Love in Torment. The Italian Renaissance was a period full of amazing cultural and artistic rebirth. The concept of love, as well as the consequences that love brings, were a frequent topic within art, poetry, and novels. Of the artwork discussing the themes of love, some of the most notable are the stories told within the Decameron, a collection of novellas by a group of young men and women who fled Florence to escape the plague, otherwise known as the Black Death. The Decameron was written by Giovanni Boccaccio, which is important due to the nature of his storytelling. Boccaccio was a humanist writer, meaning that instead of focusing on religion and the supernatural, Boccaccio would focus on the old world and what it meant to be a human. In this sense, most of his stories deal with social commentary on all issues facing people of the Italian Renaissance. Everything from corruption in the church to class divide to religious tolerance was written about in some form in the Decameron, using humorous or thrilling stories as a vessel to teach them. A topic that Boccaccio seems to always write about, even to the extent that he had to explain it in the introduction, is women. More specifically, stories centered around women in love and the troubles they face in society. You see, while most love stories start with love interests, the will they, won't they segment, and then a nice, cushy, happy ending to pull at your heartstrings, it's not exactly a realistic nor human depiction of what occurs in relationships, especially compared to the Italian Renaissance. Class divide, social hierarchy, wealth, virtue, adultery, betrayal, loss, suicide, murder, all of these things are affected or motivated by the sensation of love, and Boccaccio makes it a point to teach these lessons to his readers the same as in every other story featured in the Decameron. One of the stories featured in the Decameron which most strongly covers the themes of class divide is the first story told by Fiammetta on the fourth day, the tale of Prince Tancredi and his beloved daughter Gismonda. Prince Tancredi loves his daughter so much that it takes longer than usual to have her married off, and after the husband he does find for her dies quickly into their marriage, he doesn't attempt to find her a new husband afterward and simply keeps her with himself at home. Gismonda is a smart and lively woman, and while she is no doubt living a life of luxury in her father's estate, her romantic and sexual needs are completely ignored. Considering her predicament, Gismonda falls in love for her father's valet, a man by the name of Guiscardo. The issue here is that while Guiscardo is an excellent man who is respected by Tancredi himself, he was not born into nobility. That is to say that he's of humble birth, which naturally makes him unfit to be in a relationship with the daughter of a prince. Despite his upbringing, Guiscardo also falls for Gismonda, and they find ways to meet behind Prince Tancredi's back. Already, the idea of those in the aristocracy being unable to fall in love with social classes beneath them is present within the work, but the issue only becomes worse as the story goes on. Gismonda gives a letter to Guiscardo explaining that there's a cavern beneath the palace with steps leading to her bedroom chamber. If Guiscardo were to sneak through that route, he can make it to and from Gismonda's room undetected. The two meet and make love with each other for most of the day, which is great for both parties until Tancredi manages to get involved. Prince Tancredi loves his daughter, and makes it a habit to visit her bedroom and talk with her. One day when she's out in the garden, Tancredi sits behind his daughter's bed and accidentally falls asleep. He soon wakes up to the sound of Gismonda and Guiscardo having sex. Rightfully mortified, as most fathers would be, he stays silent until they both leave, and then he jumps out of the window and runs back to his room chamber. Later that night, Tancredi has Guiscardo arrested and tried for committing crimes against the daughter that belongs to him, quote-unquote. When Gismonda is confronted by Tancredi, she assumes that Guiscardo is already dead and chastises her father for his cruelty. She didn't pick Guiscardo for no reason. He was a great man, and even her father had a high opinion of him. The only reason why this is considered to be a crime is because of the fact that Tancredi didn't have control over her love interests, and the person she's having this relationship with is someone who's low-born. Gismonda displays her strength as a woman by telling her father off, and when Tancredi leaves, he has his men kill Guiscardo and cut his heart out to be given to Gismonda in a golden cup with a note attached, effectively saying, "You made me sad, so I'm gonna make you sad," a move that some might consider to be petty. In an equally petty move, Gismonda pours poison over the heart and drinks it out of a chalice, effectively saying, "I could make you even sadder." She then dies and ends up buried with her lover Guiscardo. In her death, Gismonda takes control over her father and delivers this quote: "Save those tears of yours for a less coveted fate than this of mine, Tancredi, and then shed them not for me, for I do not want them. Who ever heard of anyone other than yourself who wept on achieving his wishes? But if you still retain some tiny spark of your former love for me, grant me one final gift, and since it displeased you that I should live quietly with Giscardo in secret, see that my body is publicly laid to rest beside his in whatever spot you choose to cast his remains." While Tancredi felt deeply betrayed by Gismonda, his love for her as a father is more powerful than any event that could come between them. Unfortunately, he only realizes the severity of his actions and comes to his senses too late. The overall message of the story is that while these two are deeply in love with each other and deserve to be together, they're separated by circumstances outside of their own control. I'm sure that if given the chance, Gismonda would be born a peasant so she could be with Giscardo, and Giscardo likely feels the same way. Despite this, the authority of her father and the unchecked power he has makes it so he can kill his daughter's lover without consequence, even when his only crime is reciprocating her feelings. These misogynistic standards set by the society of the Italian Renaissance prevent people from being with who they truly desire, and that theme is constantly used within the Decameron. The second story from the Decameron I would like to reference is the fifth story from the fourth day, which is much similar in regards to the plot. The story features Lisabetta, her brother, and Lisabetta's lover, Lorenzo. The theme of the story is about familial authority and maintaining social images, which in this case is taken to the absolute extremes. Lisabetta's brothers have failed to arrange her marriage after her father's death, so she falls in love with one of their employees, Lorenzo. One night, they're discovered by her brothers, and they plot to murder him to maintain their reputation. After this, Lorenzo appears to Lisabetta in a dream and informs her about his location and that he was murdered. Lisabetta journeys out to Lorenzo, cuts his head off, carries it in a sack, and buries it in a pot of basil, as most sane people do. Given the intense amount of care that she puts into it, her neighbors become concerned, which of course attracts her brother's attention, and in a reference to Ronald Reagan, they confiscate the pot. They find Lorenzo's head and take the pot away, and in a reference to my life, she literally cries herself to death. Of course, the theme shown in the story is that while it's the fault of Lisabetta's brothers for not finding her a proper husband, all of the consequences are laid on Lisabetta and Lorenzo, simply because their love is illegitimate or wrong. The only wrong factor within this love is the difference of wealth, but the social dynamics of this period didn't allow for true love to exist in the upper classes. Boccaccio makes a note of this difference by showing how tormented Lisabetta is, even though she is completely within the right to find someone she loves. To their own family members, people of the aristocracy would prefer emotionally destroying them to the point of committing suicide than be given the mild social stigma of someone born into nobility dating someone of a humble birth. The story was meant to show the great lengths people go to maintain social order and how love does not always play a role in the cutthroat game of reputation. While this may be a more liberal reading of Boccaccio, it shows that he is sympathetic to the plight of women and holds a lot of traits of a feminist from his writing. While there's characters that are domineering and oppressive to women, those characters are often morally bankrupt and proven wrong in the end, as shown by Prince Tancredi and Lisabetta's brothers. Moving on to the final example in the ninth story of the fourth day, the knights Guillaume de Roussillon and Guillaume de Cabestan. Cabestan falls madly in love with Roussillon's wife, and she reciprocates. Roussillon spies on the two one day and invites Cabestan out under the guise of planning for a tournament. Roussillon then kills Cabestan and cuts out his heart. He then brings the heart to his wife and claims it's a boar's heart to be cooked for dinner. She eats every morsel of the heart later that night, and when Roussillon tells her it's the heart of Cabestan, she swears that she'll never eat anything as perfect as that before jumping out of the window and killing herself. When the neighborhood finds out, they have the two lovers buried together, with their story written on the tombstone. Again, Boccaccio uses the symbolic imagery of hearts being ripped out of the chest and the lovers being together after death, as if to show that their relationship in death is allowed to last for eternity. This is the first case I've discussed featuring actual adultery, but you should know that this is the most common theme in the love stories featured within the Decameron. Married women cheating on their spouses is a vessel that Boccaccio uses for comedy, yet also is used to show the intelligence and agency of women who were no doubt being walked over during this time. Many of these stories play on the idea that the men would never imagine their spouse or family member plotting something so cunning, which does allow for them to be fooled. But when the men in the stories eventually find out, they act based on rage instead of understanding. Women are viewed by men in this case as something that belongs to them, like their property, and love is the tool of social mobility and bargaining, so taking on lovers is almost always met with bloodshed and death. In the period of the Italian Renaissance, love was something that was ironically heavily romanticized. The idea of the honorable courtly love versus the earthy love of the lower classes was not only what was expected, but the betrayal of these ideas were met with great punishment and social ostracization. While there are many elements of Boccaccio's stories that can be related to the modern day, it's important to realize how far we've come as a society in regards to the ethics of relationships and the autonomy that women have in deciding who they love. The dynamics have changed to suit the image it seemed Boccaccio wanted, which was people falling in love with each other out of, well, love, and living happily together because of it. The idea that arranged marriages where one party has no say in the matter could work is ridiculous, and are only expected to work when the oppressed party, which in this case is women, aren't allowed any room to complain or run away. In modern society, people generally don't love each other as a tool for bargaining or social mobility, and women are free to be with whoever they desire, and relationships are significantly healthier now because of it. Social class plays almost no role as a barrier to love anymore, and the world is better that way. In conclusion, Boccaccio sought to teach lessons and give commentary on various social issues, and love was chief among these teachings. While he wrote these stories to be entertaining and dramatic, the message each of these tales were based on provides an interesting account and interpretation to what love was like during the Italian Renaissance, whether it be beautiful, sad, humorous, or terrible. Among these stories of scandalous love, the themes are laden with imagery and symbolism critiquing his society without coming off as pretentious or detracting from the enjoyment, which makes Boccaccio not only a great writer, but a man who had a great understanding of humanity and what emotions drive us to do.